Welcome to MustardHub Voices Behind the Build. In these episodes, I talk with the people building, backing, and running better workplaces. I'm your host, Curtis Forbes, and our guest today is John Baldino. With over 30 years of human resources experience, John's passion for setting contributors and companies up for success is still going strong. John's a keynote for U.S. and international conferences where he shares content and thoughts on leadership, collaboration and innovation, employee success, organizational design and development, as well as inclusion and diversity. John has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Fast Company, SHRM Publications, and is a regular contributor to the Humanreso blog. John's been named one of the 2025 top 100 HR tech influencers. He's also co-host of the wildly popular LinkedIn Live webcast, But First Coffee. John's currently the president of Humanreso, a global human resources consulting firm, and the husband of one awesome wife and the dad of three amazing young adults. Welcome to Behind the Build, John. Thanks for joining me today.
Curtis, thank you so much for having me. That's so great that I get to hear my own bio, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. Oh yeah,
yeah, I did do those things. That and it's quite a mouthful. I mean, you're a little bit of a celebrity. We have a little bit of a celebrity here today.
Oh, that's very
I have to hear more about But First Coffee. Like, when did you start the web series? What's the concept and the format? I love that. I want to hear more about it. I know a little bit about it, but as I've watched, but I'd like for you to share with everybody listening.
Yeah. So we're coming up on 4 years of doing this, and Jackie Clayton is my co-host. Or I should say, I'm her co-host for when she
well
listens.
Done.
That's correct, right? It's very much, and I'll really go back in the archives for this. We run it very much like Regis and Kathy Lee, like the first 10, 15 minutes of how it used to be. It's a little more scripted in the newer version of things, but back then it was like, what one topic comes up and they chat for a few minutes and move into another and say things that they probably shouldn't say and backpedal. And so it is very organic. And I love it. And it's very, very, very community involved. Like, people are involved in the chat on all different platforms and just commenting on things. And so we really do a lot of interaction as well. Super fun.
I love that. Well, before we jump into other things, any tips for me on having a successful web series? You're on the spot now, John.
I know, right? Well, Jackie she had been on The Amazing Race. And so, of course, that kind of helps, right? So maybe if you did like Dancing with the Stars or something, like that could maybe help the web series to do better. You could look into that.
Fair. Yeah. We'll put that next on the roadmap.
Man versus Wild, maybe could do that. Maybe.
Well, cool. So, I mean, to kick things off, tell me a little bit about Humanreso. And if I'm not mistaken, you're also the founder, right? Not just the president.
I am. Yes. Yeah. So, I had the privilege of being involved in HR, as you shared, for such a long time. And so a little over 13 years ago at this point, I started Humanreso. And the goal, I would say initially, it still is, but the primary goal initially was seeing what was happening in the marketplace for organizations that were small business, maybe lower mid-market tier, and they were competing much more robustly with larger organizations because of the way in which commerce was occurring, right? Like with web traffic and a lot more online ordering of things. If you're in the product space, in the services space, we were just kind of really getting comfortable with some forms of Skype. Remember Skype? And some of those, right? And I thought, gosh, after all these years of me being involved in HR and seeing like when I started, we were doing payroll in-house, and benefits were like major medical, and we took care of those things in-house. HMO was really weird. And so we just had this very, very insulated view of what was then personnel responsibilities. And through the years, decades, you just see all this, I'll say, outsourcing start to occur,
Yeah.
seeking external support. And I thought, we're really going to start needing that for these smaller businesses, lower mid market, who are finding themselves competing in talent strategy considerations, in market placement, in growing teams in a way that's going to create other verticals and deepening offerings for companies. They're going to need our support and not be able to afford a CHRO or a VP of
Right.
HR. How can we help to get some of these tools in their hands and support in their hands? And Humareso was born, and thankfully, I was kind of right.
Yeah. I'm really kind of curious. So the story about why it sort of came to be makes a lot of sense. Like I see and or I can see that market shift, right? And I lived through it, I think to some degree. Kind of dated me a little bit with Skype. Boy, I remember you
Right,
using that back in the day.
right.
Um, but tell me about your journey even before that. I mean, how did you get into HR in the first place? And now, but now you're an entrepreneur, right? I mean, so these are two very different things that sort of crystallized into one person.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unusual space place to be, right? There's not a lot of HR entrepreneurs from a service oriented perspective. Yes, on the
I would agree
technology
with that.
side, certainly, right? Certainly there are, but on the entrepreneurial side of thing for HR, it seems kind of counterintuitive, right? Not comfortable. Most HR people
Mhm.
are not great at sales, to be honest, and
Yeah.
right. And so
Yeah.
I've always had this sort of vibe to me in terms of being able to talk to people. And that serves well in HR, but it also serves well in sales. And so, from a
Yeah.
business development standpoint, which is probably, and it's not like I'm trying to wordsmith it, but I probably look at it more like that. I'm developing business based upon the way I would interact with people. So it came very naturally in that regard. Uh, I think that still feel a bit of an anomaly when it comes to that, though, for sure.
Yeah. I would probably characterize you as an anomaly when it comes to that. But what even attracted you to HR in the first place? What made you stick with it? There had
Yeah,
to be something because a lot of people, frankly, run away from it.
yeah. It isn't that glamorous in the sense of, especially when I got involved in the personnel end of things, was very tactical. I mean, I remember starting out and I was helping to do uh, operational training. Where I started in
Mhm.
retail. And so
Yeah.
taking people in and showing them how to use the register. And back then we had triplicate carbon inserted receipt paper that we had to put in
Oh
each time
man.
we were going. I mean, right back in the day, department store kind of thing, and how to
Yep.
stock and restock items, and dealing with customer complaints, that kind of stuff. Very, very tactically minded in terms of the way in which I kind of cut my teeth in personnel. Um, and I just like the instruction part of things. I will tell
Yeah.
you, their training is probably a core bit to me, and so that educational component just sat well. And this vein of business was the place for that to happen. I was asked to do management, in other ways, like other operational management things. I don't know. I just didn't think that was the path for me.
Well, you are a people person, and I get that vibe that you like to and are probably very good at helping people be better people.
Yeah,
Um, that might be confusing if you put that on your website, but if you use it, feel free. You don't you get that one for free.
I will let you know if
Um,
I use it. Yes.
back to Humoriso for a beat. What kind of organizations does Humoriso work with? Now, you don't have to name any names here, right? But I'm kind of curious to tell me a little bit about what that picture looks like. Who are your customers? What are these kinds of work? How big are they? What's the general complexity? Is it a very diverse worker classification, specific to industries, et cetera?
Yeah, it is. It is diverse on purpose, and part of that is because my own career previous to starting Humoriso has been very diverse
Okay.
in terms of industry. So retail, as I mentioned, restaurant, hospitality, education, bit of nonprofit, manufacturing and distribution, banking and finance,
Oh,
technology. I
wow.
mean, so pretty varied.
Yeah.
And so I felt like if I'm going to start Humareso, I wanted it to be just like me in that regard. I didn't want there to be, because if you do good human resources, you should be able to do it anywhere. I understand there's nuances, but you should be able to do it anywhere. And so our client base looks like that. As I shared, when I started, it was small business more than
Hmm.
anything else. Still probably true for us in that 50 to 500 employee range being our largest segment, I would say, that we support percentage wise. But it's been funny through the years, these 13 plus years of Humareso, the enterprise level clients that have come and said, well, wait a minute,
Really?
hold on, come and talk to us for a little bit.
Hmm. And do they come to you? Well, tell me about some of the challenges that bring them, to you for support. Is this for change management,
Mm,
or is it for?
yeah.
I'm sure there's several reasons that
Yeah.
are different across everything that you offer, but I'm kind of wondering if there's a common pain point, maybe.
I would not say there's a common pain point. I will say, but I will be thematic. Sometimes it is, and honestly, I would say, Curtis, like right now, we're trying to do more with less in a lot of companies. And I don't care if
Tell
you're
me about that.
small or up to enterprise, everyone's trying to do more with less. We see the reductions in force happening. We see some sort of technology creep in some areas that's kind of replacing some things. It's not as widespread as all that, but still some.
Yeah.
Um, and so you have companies that are like, okay, how do I still get done some of the things I need to get done with um, lowered headcount? How do I do that? So some of that is very tactical on our end. So for instance, if you think about some enterprise level organizations with thousands, tens of thousands of employees, they're happy to outsource leave management, for instance, to us. We're
Hmm.
handling all the FMLA, state leave, city leave
Okay.
related, right? Takes so much time, and they're like, listen, we need to get our business partners, our HR business partners, out amongst the people to handle employee relations and build up the teams, not to take hours and hours and hours to process FMLA paperwork. You all do that. We'll take care of this. Terrific. So it can be very thematic in that regard as far as
Interesting. Where
tactical.
you're working directly with their employees, not just helping leadership with some type of
Yeah,
like
that's
change
right.
management. You're
That's right.
actually okay, great.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
else?
and we're like regularly part of the HR team meetings, let's say every week,
Hmm.
because we're functioning in that regard. But to your point, another theme is really organizational design and development. That's going to include change management. It's going to include values constructs, right? We have organizations that have found their value system stymied. They're great words. We've
Yeah.
forgotten how they're supposed to show up.
They're just words on the wall, right? And
Yes.
not really permeating through the organization yet. Sure.
And how do you rebuild sort of again a change perspective to it? How do you build a communications strategy to it? How do we build technology that we already own to sort of
Hmm.
activate based on some of these values
Mm.
that haven't lived? How do we help people to know where they show up in very measurable ways
Yeah.
that allow management to be more free to invest in others, to say, let's talk about what transparency means here. If, for example, if that's a value of yours, what does that
Mhm.
look like? Does it mean that we're supposed to tack up everybody's salary on the break room wall? I don't think
Right.
so. Like what could that look like? And we kind of come in and help with that sort of redesigned thinking in org structure, but also
Hmm.
behaviors, right? We're talking about building habits. We're talking about
Hmm.
building interactions,
Yeah.
frameworks for that. What do the personas look like if we're going to start
Yeah.
hiring to bring people in as well? That sort of thing.
It's very interesting. I think a lot about these things. I'm curious from your mind as the founder, not just president, but how did these things influence how you built Humoriso? Like,
Mm.
I'm curious about where you started from one place, right, solving a particular problem, and people came to you for so many of these different things, right? These thematic, items that you touched on. What what was that roadmap? What did it look like to get you to your current state?
Um, I wish I had a great story for this. So the first year, the first year, in all transparency, it was just me. I was
As
working,
most,
yeah,
as most startups and small businesses, I mean, that's pretty standard.
and I think that people we don't talk about that enough. To be honest with you, I think that we wait to see the company that's being acquired for $40 million. Wow, look at what this person did, and that's no. It was I worked in the basement of my own home, unfinished basement. I'm 6'3". My ceiling is 6 foot. I had to keep my head between the joists of the floor above me in my unfinished basement. And that's where I started. And I say that because it really drove home why um, the contract of building Humanreso mattered concurrent to the work that I was doing for clients. Because I knew that my knee jerk, again, honestly, my knee jerk is let me do it all. Can I do it all? Yes. Should I do it all? That's a totally different question, but I can.
If you
And
were
I jump
advising
in.
yourself, I'm sure you would have thoughts on that.
Correct. Genuinely. And so when I look to build the organization, 1 year, almost to the day of Humareso's existence, I hired my first two full time and one part time person. And because things had started to grow so quickly.
Yeah,
And I think that
right.
when I looked at the organization, I thought two things. One, while I want us to be able to be as much of a resource for as many companies as possible, I need to make sure that I'm surrounding myself and, in light of the clients we're supporting, with the areas where, while I can do it, I'm not the best at it. Who are those folks that are going to come in to help be stronger in areas that
Yeah,
I'm not?
elevate. Yeah.
Yeah, like if I never do an open enrollment for benefits again, I promise I will die fine. Like I don't ever have to do that again. But I've got people who they cannot get enough of reading summary plan
Yeah.
descriptions. Like they
And yet
like
they're amazing at it, I'm sure.
amazing, amazing. I want that person.
Yeah.
And I
Yep.
want that person to shine. You teased, and I will take it as teasing. You teased early on to say, the whole celebrity thing and all that. The other thing that I was very thoughtful of is if my voice is the only voice that's heard, what a shame for what I'm building. What a shame for what I'm building. I need to make sure that the other voices in the room are heard and heard as deeply and significantly as someone might think my voice is. And we've been very fortunate through the years to have such great folks become a part of Humareso. And I very rarely had to do a lot of recruiting. The network
Yeah.
is wide and deep, and so just letting a couple people know, hey, I might be looking for, having folks say, just let me know. As soon as you're ready,
Yeah.
let me know. I'm coming.
I love there's a few things I want to pick apart here that I love. I mean, it's kind of a testament to your leadership, right? And it's funny because I think most folks who start a business, whether you're founders of a large organization or even a small business, you wear a lot of hats early
Mm.
on, especially, right? You talked about, you talked about talking about these things transparently, as if it was, a bad thing. The reality is we all have imposter syndrome. And I think
Oh,
that
for
it's something people don't address a lot. It's something that we hide, we keep under the trench coat, right? Because we don't want others to think anything about it or to see through us. But everybody starts somewhere, right? We all start in a particular place, and it's a testament to your leadership to be able to recognize that, yeah, you can do everything. You did do everything because you had to do everything.
yes.
Um, but there's that saying that A players hire A players and B players hire C players. Um, the fact that you've been able to find people who can elevate you is what will keep the entire organization elevated. We have a value at MustardHub, and I generally don't like to talk about MustardHub on these calls, but it's relevant here, and it's iron sharpens iron,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And if we're not holding each other accountable and elevating each other, right, then the organization as a whole will sink to the lowest common denominator. And,
Yeah.
obviously somebody who can recognize those things and be comfortable with being at sometimes the quietest person in the room, that's okay. Right.
Yes. And I will tell you, it's excellent. I'm so glad you shared that insight about MustardHub. That is awesome because, um, in the context of the imposter syndrome that you were mentioning as well, relatively speaking, that concept really came to be in existence in the 70s. Now, as someone born then, I would like to say it wasn't that
Hey, I'm
long
with
ago.
you.
But in time, like relative to time, it isn't that old of a concept. And so why am I saying that? Because I think the way in which um, uh, commercial business construct has progressed has sort of forced people into this. Oh my gosh, this moves so quickly. I'm aware of
Yeah.
how much I don't know. Who am I? Someone's going to find out. That started to happen. I mean, and by the time we got to the 90s, it was like, oh my gosh, left, right,
Hmm.
you, everything's moving. When you can have people around you that help to ground you to say, it's okay that you don't know everything. And by the way, when I'm with you and people are treating you like you know everything, I'm also going to be the person to say, he doesn't know everything. And so, my wife is such a great partner to me
You can't say it
because
to her.
I can't. No, she won't watch this anyway because the she's like over the HR famous thing. She's like, who cares about what you do, right? Like, and I say that to say the smartest business people keep people around them that are grounding.
Yeah.
It may not be every role around you, but you got to have
Hmm.
a couple that at least are going to help ground you to say, don't believe your own press, and also don't believe the lie that you're not good enough. You live in between.
Hmm.
That's
Mm.
important.
I like that. I like that. I like that a lot. And you don't have to tell your wife that she doesn't know everything. That would be a bad career move. That would be a really bad career move on your part.
She's
But
well aware.
talk, talking more about some of the clients that come to you. I mean, do they usually have a good insight into what their organization needs? You usually have some guiding. Is there some process? And I kind of follow that up with, I think from what I would imagine that a lot of the pain points and problems that the organizations face could be classified as more like misalignment, right?
Mhm.
Between leadership and the workforce, between the teams, even within the leaders or the workforce, regarding some expectations and then reality. Talk to me a little bit about, like, do they sometimes get it wrong? Do they need your guiding? Do they come to you already knowing what the problem is? And tell me more about, like, how you see the alignment between each of the teams individually and then together within the organizations.
Such a
Yeah, big. I'm sorry.
deep question.
Big
There's so many
question there.
facets to that. So, but um, sometimes they do come to us with. I'll actually say more than sometimes. Probably the majority of the time might be slightly majority, but majority nonetheless. Having an idea about what they think the problem is. Um, I'm not saying that that means by the end it is what they thought, but they do have some sense of here's what we've assessed. There
Mhm.
are times for sure that we come in and they're like, I have no idea. I just want to fire everybody and start over. And you're like, okay, well, that's probably not the greatest place to start. So we'll figure out what's happening. But um, I do love the fact that they take a stab at it, though. I'm not mad that any client will come and say, I just talked to one today that said, we just have a workforce that um, can't stop talking to each other about how undervalued they feel.
Mm.
Fascinating, right? And we pay well, we give great benefits, we do this, we do that, but they continue to have these side conversations about how undervalued they are.
Interesting.
And so they have done an assessment, and it'll be fun to see what we uncover because this is something that we can help get them out of. But there is hard work here. That's the thing that I think I want to highlight because you mentioned a word that I was absolutely going to say, which is often it's expectation management that you've got to address. Why do you expect the things that you expect? Where does that come from? Um, and it can be from the simplistic to the complex. So simplistic. Someone sits with you and says, an employee, Jimmy's picking on me. Jimmy, my manager, is picking on me because um, I do things that he talks to me about and tells me I need to do better. And I know he doesn't talk to anybody else like that. It's only me
Hmm.
that he comes and tells and talks to. And the response to that is, I'm so sorry you feel that way. When you've sat in with Jimmy's conversations with other employees, what have you observed in the way in which he disciplines them? And to see them sort of stop for a second and say, well, I don't sit in with Jimmy when he's talking to other people. Okay, well, what you just said was he doesn't do this to anybody else, only to you, but he's only talking to you when he talks to you. How do you know what Jimmy is saying to the other employees? You have made an expectation of what Jimmy must be saying to other people. That had to come from somewhere because you've leaned
Yeah.
into that as truth, not just an opinion.
Right.
and
Right.
and right, and that has now affected the way in which you've chosen to engage. Again, simplistic. Complex is where you start to have senior leadership all the way at the C-suite who
Hmm.
are wrestling with forecasting, as one example. How do we predict and know what's coming? How should this organization be ready for what's coming? When should we know if we should pivot with some of the service or product offerings we have? How do we know when we're ready for a new vertical of offering product or service? How do we know if it's time for us to acquire something that feels like we're missing? How do we, and you just go through this in all of these questions. And I say, where is the expectation coming from that you should know all of the answers to the 7 things you just said? Where does that expectation come from? Is it because you have CEO after your title? Is that where that comes from? And the response almost always is ultimately, yeah, I'm the COO, I'm the CFO, I'm the CEO. Because of being given that title, my responsibility is to know. And that's such a heavy burden. It colors
And
everything that
have,
you'll do and how you approach people
yeah.
and how you approach circumstances. That's, again, those ends of the spectrum. To answer your question, that's the gamut that we'll run and sit and be invited into with clients.
I think that's really interesting. Some very good examples there about sort of this expectation management. I feel like that should be its own field of study,
Yes.
expectation, because your brain lives the reality that you create, right? So,
Yes.
in your example about the employee who had this expectation or felt this particular thing, he or she was obviously disgruntled, was angry about it, was upset about it, and then it was causing a bad experience in the workplace. Why? Well, because that's how his brain was living that reality.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's rough because, as the HR person, you want to be protective of every individual. As John from
Yeah.
Philadelphia, different than the HR person, I want to take this person out back and say, here's the last 7 write-ups for other people other than
Yeah.
you. Now do you feel
Yeah.
better? Now do you feel better? Right? Like, but you can't, obviously, like that's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But just this sense of, my gosh, we waste so much time. Why would you
Yeah.
waste months and months fretting over this? It's not
Yeah.
true.
So, for a lot of leaders who want to see, let's say, better alignment across their organization, drive positive change, do well by their people. I think a lot of leaders, have this need to feel these things.
Mm,
Do you think there's certain kinds of upskilling, of education, things that they should be pursuing, either for themselves, things they should be giving to the people that they work with? Do you think there's skills or competencies that they need to learn to set themselves up for success in this space? You've talked about a lot of different
yeah.
things. What do they do?
Uh, I have a few thoughts,
Okay. Okay.
and I'll try to be succinct with them. Right. So one, um, if you're not great with finance, take the time, skill up. Don't be afraid of the P&L. Don't be afraid of the fact that you've been looking at one for 5 years as the COO or the VP of something, not finance, and you still don't quite understand everything. Just ask for help. ask, seek that support, get that education. It's okay. HR people famous for not understanding it, but not asking. Just go get the help. Um, I would also say, though, on the maybe a softer end of things, soft skill type thing, critical thinking is like woefully in short supply.
Lost art.
And we have removed too many barriers that people should experience so that the critical thinking components can develop. We spoon feed so much and make things so accessible in our education system and leading into the workplace. It's really hard for people to know how to develop coping mechanisms and response theory in practice. When we've let everything be distant, remote, protected, insulated, we're robbing ourselves of some of these critical developments that we need in our brains. We need it because critical thinking, again, is in short supply. I will pepper that in by saying we also need to help people with real relational management. One area that comes to mind, and again, this is not scripted, one area that comes to mind off the top of my head is forgiveness. We don't teach people how to forgive. We just assume that forgive means just get over it. That's not what it means. We've got to help people to learn how to forgive because that is stuff that people carry for years. You and I, Curtis, have an interaction. It doesn't go well. I'm mad at you. You say, I'm sorry. I say, it's all cool. It's fine. 6 months later, when you do the next thing that pisses me off, I'm going to remember 6 months ago because I haven't forgiven it. It's not past. It's going to dog me, and I'm going to carry that thread of grudges all the days of our interactions. It's not helping us. It's keeping businesses stymied.
You know, I've never had a conversation in this podcast and crossed this bridge and talked about, and it's interesting to hear you talk about that, right? Because in the normal course of human relationships, which is what happens within organizations, right? Any organization that has more than one person, right, has human relationship dynamic.
Yes.
And forgiveness, first of all, transgression and forgiveness, right, are parts of those relationships. That's going to happen no matter where you go, right? I think that, while obviously nobody wants friction in any kind of dynamic that they have in the workplace, I think it's inevitable at some point in time. And even if it's because of a misunderstanding, right? It could be
Yes.
something as
Yes.
little as a
Yes.
misunderstanding. But we talk about what's fair, what's not fair, what's legal, what's not legal, what's all these things, but we never talk about what you just said. Nobody talks about it. It's not in a it's not in an HR manual, right? It's generally not in leadership training, right? It doesn't make it anywhere in the book. And I think you've hit on something that's actually a nerve. It's really interesting. And we've never had this conversation. Thank you for bringing it up.
My pleasure. And I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah. But, it's interesting that I'm going to kind of pivot here because we talk about relationships, we talk about human connectivity and interactivity. And over the last, 30 years, everything that we do at work has become more and more digitized.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships and even relational skills obviously are on decline. I mean, I don't have to explain to you or probably anybody listening, right? That when it comes to being on your phones, the way that the way the new generation, communicates or frankly doesn't with each other. I mean, they could be sitting right next to each other and texting each other, and that's
Yes.
literally how they communicate. I mean, you've got kids, I've got kids, we know how it
Yes.
works.
Yes.
Um, it it makes sense. It's sort of this obvious straight line, as much as we don't want it to be. Where, listen, there's even tools and technology out there that aim to create a human layer through technology. So
So
let's
interesting.
talk about HR tech. I mean, what kind of tools and platforms? You don't have to name drop. You can name drop them all. What kind of tools and platforms should leaders be embracing,
Mm,
or at least what category, in order to see, with greater clarity, align with their organization, drive these results, see these positive outcomes, these outcomes that, to be described through the lens of your work?
yeah. It's a great question. And I have to tell you, I don't know if I've ever been asked that question. It's certainly not in that way that you just asked it. Fascinating question.
Yes.
I
One
completely agree
point for
with
me.
you. Yeah, I mean, yes, write that down. I'm not. I don't want to come at it. For those that are listening, we're not curmudgeons. Curtis and I are not like raising our fists in the air saying these young people today they don't know how to communicate. That's not what we're doing. Um, uh, However, we also know that we've got a workforce that has evolved quickly over the
Yeah.
last 5 years into one that is more fractured because it's separate, right? There's this remote workforce component, at least the hybrid component
Oh yeah.
has influenced the way in which rapport development occurs. There's no way around it, folks, that it has influenced it. Okay. From a technology standpoint, I'm a couple of simple things to start with, and then I'll go a little bit more in the weeds. Simply love, um, apart from an accommodation that's been officially requested, I love encouraging people flip the video camera on, stop with the camera off, just audio. If I'm never going to see you, I'm missing out on tons of communication cues
Oh
in
my
body
God.
language and facial expression, all
100%.
the things. It's like I've only known you on the telephone. And back in the day, that was a thing sometimes, but we thought it was kind of weird to only know somebody on the telephone because we didn't really know them. We didn't see all the things. So
Yeah.
encourage people. I have staff meetings and cameras on. Let's go. Cameras
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
Um, that's one simple thing because it doesn't require an additional spend in technology. You're using
Mhm.
Teams or Slack or Google or whatever it is you're using. Just flip it on. The other thing I would say is I love the idea of helping people be forced into a relationship, meaning do some skip level chats.
Mm.
Do some, and let me define that. So if you report to a manager and that manager reports to the director should be reaching out to that employee, skipping the manager level and not all the time, but checking in with that person, developing a rapport with that person, helping that person know how to develop a rapport with someone further up in the organization. Expose them to this. We can't be mad at people who've never been exposed to these things and then say, I don't know if they're going to be able to communicate, effectively at our level. Well, they've never been exposed to it, so of course not.
Yeah.
Um, it's like having a 10-year-old be expected to know how to play varsity soccer when they've been playing travel for at 10 years old. Give them a chance to be exposed to it. Let them see it. Let them see the difference.
Yeah.
um, uh, Again, couple of simple things to start with. From a more in the weeds perspective, I love the idea of utilizing technology, and I'll be specific to HR tech, that incorporates healthy AI that's defined. It's
Mm.
okay for there to be AI related components to some of the software that's happening that might open a door for practicing communication. I love the AI bots that are interviewing and give you a chance to sort of practice interviews with an AI bot that will be responsive to what it is that you're sharing. I think that's terrific. It
Mhm.
helps me to know what I'm missing because that bot has
Interesting.
been programmed to be able to say, as a result of Curtis saying this makes the most sense as a follow up question, or these three choices. Now, as I'm the person who's interviewing, I'm got to be ready for those three responses. Okay,
Mhm.
let me practice. The other thing, though, I don't just do agentic AI bots on everything. That's not relational, right? I don't need a bot for every single thing that's going on. Back in the day, we used to have Clippy in Microsoft, and I was desperate to close Clippy every time he came on because
I
he was
do
in a
remember.
nuisance, right? He was a
Yeah.
nuisance. Don't have this bot constantly pop up. Can I help you? What do you need? Can I help you? What do you need? Can I help you? What you want to make people angry? Build your product to do it that way. Like there in HR, we're leaning a little little too much in some platforms doing that. Be thoughtful about why we would do it. We're not teaching people how to be critical thinkers, coming back to that. We're just teaching them to look to the bottom right corner and ask everything without doing any research, without learning how to disseminate information. We've got to help people balance that, right? And give them opportunities to do it. Last thing I'll say quickly, there are great learning management tools that are out there. LMS, right? Get those things in place, but do things that are behaviorally minded. There needs to be a practice of what it is that you're reading. The only name that I will say to start with is Humanreso, my own company. We've got proprietary platforms, HTS,
Oh,
Humanreso
I like that.
Technology Solutions, HTS Perform, with habits in place. My goodness, let people practice. You cannot measure them on things that you're asking of them if you've never given them a chance to be exposed to it until the moment that they're being tested on it. You're setting them up to fail. Let's
Yeah.
figure out ways that we can build behaviors into the work that we're doing or we should be doing in order to advance people.
I like that. I think, once eh, well, eventually offline, you're going to have to tell me a whole lot more about that because I want to dive in a lot deeper to that.
Sure.
But we'll have to do that at a different time. But with all these things in mind, let's look towards the future. Let's talk about some predictions. I want to hear what's on your mind when it comes to the future of work. What's
Yeah.
it going to look like? Tell me about the big changes in the workforce, particularly around outsourcing and remote teams. You brought that up. Tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about distributed teams, remote teams, the hybrid. Tell me about the future of work.
um, we've got people who may be working in organizations that are sunsetting. I didn't say dying. I said sunsetting. They're moving from, they are wanting to retire or they're wanting to at least step down. Those that are coming up don't expect work to look the way it looks right now. They
Yeah.
don't. And so if I look to the future, we have to be ready to pivot. I still talk to organizations that want me to know that we're not going to change the way that we're doing work. It's been like this for 58 years. This is how it is, and this is all it will be. And my response to them is, okay, you may be right. What will happen when you retire? You do three people's jobs right now. When you retire and someone comes into your role, I'm going to tell you the percentage of people who want to do three jobs but be paid for one is slim. What will happen then? Right?
I'm
Like,
not even sure it's a non-zero number.
yeah, right. So you're setting all the awesome work that you've done for X amount of
Yeah.
years at this company doing that is all going to be gone like that
Yeah.
because no one will
Yeah.
do it. How do we build and scale infrastructure in work to be done? Come to the job, come to the work to be done. I'm not asking about personality. We honestly, one of the things that for the future of work is for those organizations that are still scaling based on personality, it's not a long-term game. It's not. You got to
Mm.
get to the work to be done. The other thing I want to give a shout out for though for the future of work is I love the hands. The trades, get to it. We need to
Oh
continue to
man.
be encouraging to people who are going to be our plumbers and be our electricians and build us homes and take care of our streets and all those things. It is super important that we pay attention to what's happening in the world and know that these trades are desperately needed.
Yeah, and becoming more and more valuable, especially as, their AI is not going to be able to replace those jobs nearly as easily as it
That's
is,
right.
for others. So that's what about what's next for Humoriso? What does the future hold for your organization?
I would love to say another 13 years. Let's hope for that, right? I I just think more outsourcing. And I mentioned this a while back in our chat. This doing more with less. I don't
Mhm.
know if that's going to fully if we're going to fully come out of that. And so I
Mm.
think what that means for Humoriso is more opportunity to partner and encourage organizations through work that we will do. And quite
Mhm.
frankly, even in some of the coaching that we get to do as well, there are folks who are leading organizations that need an hour with us just to say, can I just tell you what's going on in my head without having to worry that it's going to go anywhere else but me and you? You sure can. And that is so valuable for that
Yeah.
leader in the organization to have that place to do it. And it may come with tears, it may come with strain, but it needs to come out somewhere. And I'm excited to see us continue to be able to sort of develop that end of support structure along with all the tactical and
Wow.
transformative stuff we're already doing.
I have never had somebody um, uh, articulate part of what they do, or at least qualify it in that way. That's simply it's like friend as a service. You know, obviously it's not. It's more than that, right? It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's not so superficial or artificial. But it's so needed.
Yes.
It's such a gap right now, and the fact that you're doing that, I think, is really it's impressive. It's admirable. It's admirable. It's impressive.
Thank
And
you.
kind of brings me to my last question. I always like to ask this one: if a leader's coming up to you, right, and they want some advice on how to truly get it right when it comes to doing right by their people, or whether it's using HR tech, right, or some kind of change management, or just improving overall culture within their organization, and you're in an elevator up to the top floor, and before that door opens and they walk right out the door, what is that one thing that you tell them to make sure it lands?
Appropriate honesty.
Appropriate honesty.
Not everybody has to know everything.
You're dropping some bombs today, John. I'm really liking this.
Appropriate honesty. Not everybody has to know everything, but they should know something.
Yeah.
And when you're the leader and those elevator doors open at that top floor and you walk out amongst the people, they should have a sense when they see you of, um, I know what's happening. I
Yeah.
know that the person who's just walking through the cubicle area right now is telling me what's going on. And I also know that that person is telling me what I need to know. I don't want to burden everybody with everything. You don't want to be the person stopping everyone to say, gosh, it's so hard running this company. My gosh, we're down. That's not what I'm saying. That's why appropriate comes in the front of the word honesty. But you do need to have a few within your organization that you can close the door and sit with and say, I'm nervous about what's happening with tariffs.
Sure.
I'm nervous about what's happening with the economy. I'm nervous about interest rates and our accessibility towards money. I'm nervous about the lack of venture capital or PE funding that is coming into these kinds of organizations. I'm nervous about that. Can we sit and talk about it? Someone needs to hear you say it
Yeah.
because they're already thinking it.
John, I owe you a debt of gratitude. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. I appreciate you taking all the time to chat.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome. Really appreciate it.
It was a fun. And thank you to all of you who are watching or listening to this episode of Mustard Hub Voices Behind the Build. Subscribe, like, share, comment. Be sure to check us out at mustardhub.com to see how we help companies become destinations for workplace happiness and turn culture into a competitive edge. And sign up to get started with Mustard Hub for free while you're there. Till next time.